Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining His Will for Your Life episode once again. We will be discussing um, when faith is tested and when you're having suicidal thoughts. We have joining us this evening Martina Sellers of California, Lauren Spence of Connecticut, and Paula Williams of Connecticut. And we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
His will for your life with Cherie Harris. This is your weekly Wednesday 7 p.m. podcast. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. Informative, hot topics, testimonies, interviews, along with your weekly guests and more. And now here's your host, Cherie Harris.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Barry Levon Harris, and I have joining me this evening Martina Sellers, the mental health hygienist, Lauren Spence, and Paula Williams. How are you guys this evening?
I'm wonderful. How are you all doing?
Excellent.
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great. So tonight we're talking about when your faith is tested, and with the question suicidal thoughts. And so we know that there's a heavy oppressive spirit hovering over the earth, as well as over the saints of God, to the point where it's wearing and a distracting spirit on us. And so a lot of people are dealing with so much even before the pandemic. The pandemic is just an added pressure, if you will, that has cause people to have these type of thoughts. It may not be you, but it may be someone that you know that have experienced having suicidal ideations. And so we have a professional here to explain those things. And so I'm going to give you each an opportunity to share who you are. Marty, you have an extensive bio. And so to read that would take our whole hour.
No, not at all.
But I will let you go first to tell the viewers who you are.
Awesome. First and foremost, Cherie, thank you for this amazing invitation. My name is Martina Sellers, and I call myself a mental health hygienist. I am a therapist here in Southern California. And I call myself a mental health hygienist simply because just like we have daily hygiene, we need to cleanse and protect our minds on a daily basis and emphasize health and mental wellness. And so that is my passion, what I love doing. So I have a private practice out here in Southern California, where we definitely see individuals, families, and couples, you name it. We try and meet the need, especially in our Black and Brown communities, where we have lack of resources or even exposure to mental health services.
Awesome, Lauren.
Again, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're welcome.
Currently, I'm in Connecticut. I'm a licensed funeral director and embalmer. Prior to my becoming a funeral director, I spent about 10 years or so working in mental health. I managed group homes, and I dealt with individuals that had mental health and developmental disabilities. But at this point, funeral service is what I do, and that's probably what I'll take to the grave. So,
no pun intended.
You're right.
Last but certainly not least, Miss Paula Williams.
Hello.
Hi.
So, in addition to being Marty's #1 fan.
Oh, listen. I love her.
My name is Paula Williams. I'm a mom, I'm a wife. I've been in the retirement industry for the last 23 years. And years ago, I couldn't even say the word suicide. So the fact that I'm here
Yeah.
talking about it just is a testament to what God can do. So I just want to let people who feel hopeless know that there is hope. Thank you
Love
for having.
that.
Awesome, awesome. So we're just going to jump right in. As you know, there's a heaviness over the earth and the weariness of the saints of God. This is something that we don't talk about in the house of God, but it's there. And you know, I can go first. There were maybe about 10, 15 years ago that those thoughts were present with myself. I've been saved since I was 15, have a great relationship with God, but it was so much weighing on me that I felt like it would be better off if I was gone because of the pressure. And so I thank God for having that relationship with Him, and I thank God for having a friend who at that time really didn't know, but I had shared that. The thoughts that I had put out my clothing, and I was writing a letter. And because of her profession, she shared that she was going to call the police. And she prayed me through. But it was a thing that I thought needed to be done at that time. And so I'm not saying everybody has those thoughts and they don't, but I did at that time. That was years ago, though. I'm all right now. I know how to, fight in the spirit. But there was a time where I was getting beat so badly in the, from the enemy that's what my out was. So
I too experienced suicidal thoughts. A few years ago, I went through some significant challenges and changes in my own life. And one particular night, I decided to get on the highway and drive on a bridge. And while sitting there, excuse me, I pulled over, I pulled my gun out, and I couldn't decide whether I wanted to shoot myself or figure out how to get my car to the bottom of the river. And so I sat there for quite some time, and long and behold, an off-duty state trooper had rolled past and saw me pulled over. And he had passed me, and then apparently he got off the exit, got back on the highway, and came back around and saw me yet again. And so now he pulled over, assuming I was broken down or stranded, and we had a conversation about many things other than me wanting to kill myself. He ushered me back onto the road. I then got home and I began to think about other ways that I could still go ahead and commit this act. I was in a very dark place. I thought about driving to the funeral home and starting up the van in the garage and letting the CO just fill the room. And then I thought about no, and that's not the way to do it, and that's not what God would want. And I thought about what I was always taught about going to hell if you killed yourself. Then I reminded myself of the things that I had been able to overcome in my life. A lot of struggles that I had had, my weight being one of them. At one point, I was over 400 pounds, and I was able to lose that and to maintain that and to regain what I once had lost in reference to my health, my self-esteem, my worth, and my worth as far as me as an individual. So I felt like if I was able to get through that, conquer that, maintain that success, along with therapy, along with counseling, along with the support of others, then I could get through anything. And that's how I was able to. And honest to God, not just because she's on the line, but Paula Williams was significant in my ability to get through those issues. I mean, that's my big sister. And I've always loved Paula. I love her family. I love her spirit. And it's people like that in my life that has enabled me to get through the fact of wanting to commit suicide. And I'm like you. I've gotten through it. I'm over it. But I once was there.
Yes.
And it's really interesting too because Lauren had already got past that and he was on Facebook Live talking about what had happened many months ago. But I caught the middle of it, so I'm thinking it's happening now. So my
Right.
husband and I had just left the Olive Garden. We had a date night, and we're watching him pouring out his soul. And we just did a beeline to the funeral home. And we were like, "What's going on? Are you
Which is
okay?"
where I live.
Like,
I wasn't trying to commit suicide. You got to tell you
right,
that.
Right.
right. And I said, "We are not leaving here until we know that you are good. Like, I will
Right.
not let go until I know that you are good." So then when I found out that he was actually talking about what
Mm-hmm.
he had already been through, it just made me feel like, okay, he's okay.
Mhm.
Wow. I mean, Paula's going to win the Spiritual Academy Awards just
Amen.
right. She's just
Yes.
everyone's angel. I love it.
Yes.
But you know what? Sure. Thank you for having this amazing conversation because we don't talk enough about, yes, I'm saved. Yes, I'm sanctified, filled with the precious Holy Ghost. Depends on what day of the week it
Depends
is.
on what hour of the week. That's right.
Right. We all go through depression.
Mm-hmm.
We all go through hard times. That's what Psalms is all about. So y'all pulling out my theology now. That's what Psalms is all about. David was lamenting. Everywhere you turn, oh God, don't take your spirit away from me.
Yes.
And we all lament.
Mhm.
But and thank you for saying that earlier. It's a trick of the enemy to try to steal, kill, and destroy because he knows if he can't have your soul, then he's going to try and take your mind, take your joy, take everything else like that. And we have to have conversations. Say, being depressed and being a saint. One, it's okay.
That's
Two,
right.
it's normal. And
That's right.
three, let's just not stay there.
Right.
Let's not stay there. Christ even said, listen, Father, if there's any other way, since we're going into Easter season, let this bitter cup be taken
Yes.
from me, but
Yes.
not my will, but thy will be done.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And it's okay that we sometimes experience what feels temporarily like hopelessness.
Mhm.
Right.
In that. And thank you for having this conversation amongst the saints because we feel we have to be super saint. How you doing? Say, oh, blessed and highly favored. No, you're not.
Yeah.
You're going through. It's okay to say, baby, I'm struggling today.
That's right.
I'm
And that's
struggling today.
My motto is it's okay not to be okay.
That's right.
Sometimes
That's
as
right.
leaders, we feel like we have to have that face.
Right.
Robin Williams once said, people don't fake depression, they fake being okay.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
So everyone is looking for you to be all right because you're that strong friend or you're that strong family member. But you have to check on your strong friends and family.
That's right. That is so true. And I think even we have to be careful, but in the midst of the year that we've had in 2020, we cannot ignore that suicide rates have drastically increased in 2020, especially among our Black community.
And why is that?
Well, even after after we had George Floyd, and we all saw that.
Mhm.
There were within 3 weeks, 4 suicides of Black men across this country. 1 in New York, 1 in Houston, and 2 out here in LA. That tells you, especially, as a therapist, this year, 2020, I've had more Black men come to me, thank God, in therapy in this past year than I've had in all 4 years of my private practice.
Wow.
And when I say, even in what we're doing in Zoom, I've had Black men come in here and do I won't say it this way, the Oprah ugly cry.
Yes.
and they're embarrassed. I'm like, man, you don't have to be embarrassed because in here is a safe space.
Yes.
And you don't have to carry on the weight of the world. And seeing George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, y'all, I'm a therapist. And I had to call my therapist and the other Black therapists. I said, man, I'm struggling right now. I'm hurting.
And that's so important. And I'm glad that you're speaking that because I say every pastor needs a pastor, every therapist needs a therapist, every counselor needs a counselor. We need someone that we can download to and someone that can also hold us accountable.
Yes.
So, we can't just always be that go-to.
That's right. I have about 3 pastors who are clients of mine. And they're just, for the first time in history, we had everybody on the sick and shut-in list. I say that lightly, but the amount of grief and death and sickness that they've had to experience, calls off the hook, and then feeling hopelessness that because of COVID, they can't go to the hospitals. They can't go to the homes. So what do I do? So they're panicking. They're losing their minds. I'm like, it's okay. This is when we got to put our faith. This is when our faith is tested.
Yes.
And to have these outlets. So again, this is amazing that we can have this outlet and that we're able to share these thoughts. We all have been there. You know, it may have crossed our mind. I thank God for like a Dorinda Clark who shared her powerful testimony and that she wanted to just drive off and her whole family lost it. But we've been there. We can no longer secretly suffer in silence in the shadow of shame. We can't do it any longer.
Yeah. And that's the problem. We suffer in silence.
Yes.
And one of the reasons people suffer in silence because we talk too much. Take everything and turn it into gossip instead of listening and saying, what can I do to help? Let me refer you to someone. Even when people come to me with things, if it's beyond what I do, I refer them out. I can pray for you. I'll pray in a minute. Right. But then when I know you need something outside of prayer, because we do things outside of prayer, I send them out. I refer them to therapists or counselors, someone that can see them through it.
Yeah, and it's so important that we have to take this misconception about I can either pray or if I see my therapist, I'm going against my faith. No, baby, you can pray and see your therapist and maintain your salvation. Yeah. And in fact,
one thing I do, and I don't know the statistics, but I know they say Black men in general don't go to the doctor. I go to the doctor a lot, and I'm a pretty healthy individual. But it's cheaper for me to go to the doctor on a quarterly basis and have a routine follow-up and have a therapeutic conversation with my primary care provider about all factors of life than it is for me to go to a private therapist. So I see my doctor quite a bit, and we talk about various different things. And if I have a direct issue, I'm referred to a specialist if need be. But I go just because sometimes I just want someone to talk to. And I feel like my doctor is a safe place for me to be. And him and I have a great relationship. We've got a great rapport. He's been my primary for the last 13 years. And so for me to be able to go to him 4 and 5 times a year sometimes, it's a great outlet. And I'm maintaining my physical health. I'm maintaining areas of my life that if, maybe I didn't go, things may have gotten by the wayside or slipped through the cracks. So one thing, I guess my point is that I encourage our people to do is have a primary care provider, have a doctor, have someone that you can relate to, whether it's a family practitioner, whatever the case may be. But, oftentimes you can have that therapy with that individual and not have to go to a therapist or to a counselor, but you have to be honest. And you have to go in with integrity and with the sense of being honest about your habits and your concerns. Do you smoke? No, I don't smoke. You do. I can smell it. Like, there's no sense of lying about it. You know what I'm saying? So, yes. Do you smoke weed? No, but your urine came back positive. So why lie? Why not just be positive up front and then go from there? So that's been a way for me to be able to channel a lot of my thoughts and concerns. I just go see my primary care provider.
And I love that. I'm going to push back a little bit because I am a therapist with that. I feel, we have so many other things that we put a priority. I put my mental health as a priority. And here's where I challenged a lot of I said, give me your weed money. Give me, because the Saints are smoking weed. I'm sorry. Give me your alcohol money because the Saints is turning back. I'm sorry. Give me your fun money. Give me your play money. And I'm going to guarantee you that because you're feeding into working out your issues, the return on that is going to be much greater.
Oh, I understand, and I encourage people to see it there. I saw one for several years.
Wonderful.
And I get it, and it was very beneficial for me. But I'm just saying, for me, I just have a secondary outlet.
Yeah, and I love the secondary outlets, definitely. I have clients that I see once a quarter that we just do checkups. And because they've been continual clients of mine, it might be they're just checking in. It can be a copay. You know, and I think it's finding the right one. I'm not definitely, I agree with you. You can definitely have your primary care. They're great too, but I would definitely strongly suggest, possibly just someone that you can talk to and get that out too. Go ahead.
And I feel it's more important to have a Christian therapist, because so many people dibble and dabble in so many different things. I think it goes back to the Word of God. But when you have a therapist that is saved and know the Word of God, they can also implement that in their therapy sessions, and I think that's very important. Marty, if I can call you Marty, we're having you back in May 5th, yes. Actually, with the topic of faith and therapy. So it does couple together. It goes hand in hand, and so we need to have faith, of course, but there are times where we also need therapy. We need that help navigating through these trials that we're having.
And I love partnering with churches. Go ahead, Paula.
I would give anything for my father to have had mental health in any capacity whatsoever. He always prided himself on never going to the doctor, didn't have many friends, didn't talk to many people. And after my mother and he divorced, shortly after I graduated from college and had just got married 8 weeks after graduating college, they divorced. And he had no one to turn to whatsoever, to the point where he cut all of us off and said, don't call me, don't look for me, I don't want anything to do with any of you. And this went on for over 6 years, almost 7. And then one day we just he called out of the blue and said, I made a mistake, and asked for forgiveness and owned up to it. And forgiveness is not for the person, it's for you, because you have to let those things go. And I just accepted him back into my life, and I forgave him instantly. But I did not see him because it took a little time to work back up into seeing him.
Sure.
And then one day I was actually headed to Bridgeport, Connecticut for a funeral. And I called him and he said, this is where I am, come through. And I think she has a clip. I just bumped into my father. I haven't seen him in like 6 years. And when he first saw me, he went the other direction. I don't think he recognized who I was, but now he knows who I am.
No, I was walking over there to see. When I walked over there, she already called me. I didn't know what you were driving. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
All right.
It's been a long time.
I know.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Next week we're going to meet up again.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Wow.
So that was a beautiful.
Very nice.
I saw him and things were great, and we rebuilt our relationship. This went on for a couple of months, and then finally it was Father's Day, and I'm like, I haven't seen my father on Father's Day in almost 7 years, so I am taking that drive. And we went to my mother's church, and I remember leaving the church, and there was a daily bread, those little books on as we were leaving the church. So I grabbed one of those, and we went to see him on Father's Day. For me, that was remarkable. My husband, my kids, and we're talking, and he's laughing, and we had the best visit. He's from a country called Belize, and we're looking at YouTube videos about Belize, and I was like, this is just wonderful. So that was on Sunday. That was Father's Day. The very next day, we go to Six Flags, New Jersey, so Connecticut to New Jersey. While we're in New Jersey, he is in New York City, which we didn't know, because that would have been something like, oh, we'll come get you on the way home. We didn't know that he was in New York. We're in New Jersey. As we're coming through New Jersey, we had to go through New York City to get back to Connecticut. While we're coming through New York, he's in New York in a McDonald's in Midtown Manhattan that has 2 floors. He goes to the 2nd floor, eats a cheeseburger, and then goes in the men's room and shoots himself in the head. Just like that. No warning whatsoever. And then he left a note saying, I'm sorry, I'm too old, I did this to myself. And for that first day, he was like just a John Doe in a morgue in New York. We couldn't
Wow.
even, no one even knew until they tied his fingerprints and linked him to my mom. So in that case, that's what I mean. I wish he had someone like
Hmm.
Marty or just anyone to talk to, because I feel like it could be prevented, and then it
Right.
leaves everyone left behind so devastated, because people would ask what happened to your dad, and I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to
Right.
say the words. There was a stigma to it. I was embarrassed. I would go to funerals for other people that lost their dads, and these were like godly men. And I used to be like, I wish I had that. Like they had that blessed assurance that their
Hmm.
dad's in heaven, which I don't know if mine is or isn't. But it's just the fact that you just feel like, how did this happen to me? And it
Right.
took all
Yes.
this time, exactly 5 years, because this was in 2016, for me to say those words out loud,
Wow.
Wow.
and for an audience, and to be able to tell people that you're not alone. And if you feel like you don't, life's not worth living, it is, because there's
Yeah.
hope.
Yeah.
That's what,
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That is so powerful. But I think that that shows when people get to that point of hopelessness, that they think and for men, it's such a final, the completion of it.
Mhm.
Men are definitely more final in that,
Mhm.
a lot more than what women are. And they, for men, it is quick. And from strangulation to gun are definitely the top two, and hanging the top three with that.
I have to concur. I think in my almost 11 years in funeral service, I've done a lot of suicides, a lot,
Mm,
a lot. And majority were men.
yeah.
And I don't know the true statistics, but a good portion of them were fathers, husbands, they had families.
Yes.
And for those that didn't leave note, I used to always ask myself, I wonder what pushed them over the edge. You know, you wonder what causes someone to tie a rope around their neck, climb a ladder, tie the rope on the rafters in the garage, and then sit there, because there's got to be a moment where you sit there and contemplate what you're going to do.
Hmm.
And, you know, and you just take the ladder from under you, and then that's just the end of it.
Hmm.
And then, you know, your child comes home and they just find you hanging. And then you ask yourself, what was it that bad? And I can say personally, because I just shared my story, for a moment it was that bad. For a
Hmm.
moment.
Hmm.
But I pray that as everyone goes through life, we deal with it for the moment, and we don't let it consume our complete being, and we're able to get through whatever it is we're dealing with. And obviously, some people aren't able to. So, Paula, I appreciate that story. I knew it, and every time I hear it, it actually does my heart glad, because it just reminds me that I was not alone. And I think the other thing is that even though I'm through it, it still is a daily struggle. Not the suicide thought, but the thought of just knowing that I have value, the thought of knowing that I'm here, that I have purpose. And so you have to constantly remind yourself that, and you have to constantly push every day. And, you know, again, going back to my weight loss journey, that in itself was a daily struggle. And so
Hmm.
as I accomplish that, it allows me to focus my life in other areas and know I can get through those challenges as well. So,
Right.
Hmm.
So we have one of our viewers who says, please talk about how suicide affects those left behind, family and friends.
Hmm. Well, I could jump right in there. But, there is, and I think we've heard that sense of loss. You go through the cycles of grief with that, because we always go, well, what if I did this, or could I have done something differently? I've lost a young adult black male to suicide, and if I talk too much about it, it's still to this day, and it's been over 6 years, and it still hurts as if it were just yesterday. Um, and he
mm,
took a bus from Southern California, the LA region, all the way up to the Bay Area, San Francisco, on a bus ride. It's a minimum of a 10 to 12-hour bus ride to jump off the Golden Gate
wow.
Bridge, because he felt there was no hope. It leaves families devastated. And then a very dear, good friend of mine, he was on the phone with his ex-wife when their son and his son left that, Dad, you've been a great father. I just want to say thank you. Clear sign when you're starting to have these Paul, you said when laying out your, laying out your clothes and all these things, we have to be aware of the signs that are happening. And as he was calling his ex-wife, they both heard the gun go off, and he was 17, a senior in high school, shot himself. And I was doing some research before, and it's alarming that from 2001 to 2017, Black female suicide rates between the ages, here's what's going to startle you, 13 to 19. And now we're looking at suicide as young as 10-year-old now.
Yeah.
Black females between those age, it has increased 180%.
Wow.
And in our young Black men, by the same age group, 13 to 19, it has increased over 60%.
And what is the reason, though?
I'm sorry?
What's the reason? Do we know?
Well, we have to look at for our, and I have to go culturally what's happening with us, especially in 2020. We've seen suicide go up. The racism has definitely been a huge part of it. The continued seeing that there is our Black men feeling there is no hope, because then we have to go into the excessive depression. And us not knowing the signs of depression, us not knowing the signs of anxiety, us not knowing what it feels like, and that us not having adequate access to healthcare services.
Right.
Many of us not knowing how to contact and even find a therapist. Me as a Black male therapist, I represent 1% of the entire field. That's a shame. 1% as a Black male therapist.
Right. And I know, Marty, you're in California. I did some research in Connecticut, and from ages 10 to 34, suicide is the second leading cause of death.
Yes.
And that's just alarming. A lot of times you don't know the reason. And like you said with the clothes, I asked the cop, what was he wearing? He was wearing a shirt that I had gave him, and he was holding that Daily Bread book. Those were the only things,
Wow.
to know that was really my father. And so since I've started speaking out about this, which hasn't even been this long, I talked about it for the first time publicly on his birthday, which was February 4th. I got countless people telling me about an 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 30-year-old. And these were like not even that long ago, people that took their own lives. There was a sixth grader in Connecticut 2 weeks ago. A sixth grader committed suicide.
Yes.
We don't know the reasons. And through grief, I went through a lot. I went through a year and a half of grief therapy. That luckily I belonged to a church that provided that service. And she taught us there's a difference between true guilt, false guilt. I'll never know the reasons. Never. I wish I could. But those are just some of the things that you have to let go and let God, because we'll understand it better by and by.
That's right.
Yeah. I've read somewhere, and I can't remember if it's 13 seconds or 13 minutes that someone is committing suicide in the world.
Yeah. If we're looking at worldwide, it's probably every 13 seconds. With that, the rates are just alarming, and we can no longer turn a blind eye or a deaf ear. That is affecting our community so much. When you don't get the proper educations or don't get the job opportunities and these other things, the post-traumatic stress that we deal with on a daily basis, from whether it's witnessing violence, the feelings of segregation or discrimination on the job, in the school, at home, all over. When you can't go and wear a hoodie. Who would have thought that because of the pandemic, a Black man and a Black woman can wear a mask and not think it's a robbery? But
right.
Even though we make light, it's very serious.
Very serious.
I have to have conversations and with my sons. I said, listen, son, I need you to come home alive every night. Every night. So you got to let me know where you're. If it's past 11:30, 12 o'clock, I'm safe. Here I'm at. And that's just our code. But we have to have these conversations. I think we got to have these conversations about suicide awareness. And really for Black men, I call it the Coca-Cola syndrome. We're told to shut up, man up,
Yeah.
Don't show any. So when we explode,
Wow.
we explode internally. We
Right.
implode first.
Right.
And let's talk about that for a minute, Marty, because so many men, from the time that they're able to understand, they are drilled, don't cry, get up,
Right.
get yourself off, and they go through life like that. When it's okay to cry, it's okay to have a sensitive spot, and most men, they'll tell you they weren't allowed to cry,
They weren't allowed. Yes.
especially if their dad was present.
Yes. And I get it from my grandfather's generation and all of that, because they were just trying to survive in so many cases. But we cannot continue that negative narrative that we have placed in Black men specifically. And we have to teach them how to share. Doesn't mean they're going to be crying all over the place. You're like, listen, I'm angry.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm angry. And teaching us how to redirect that anger and how to say, Paula, that comment you said, maybe I took it the wrong way, but it made me feel this way. Can we discuss it? And that would stop a lot of the domestic violence that we have, a lot of the abuse and battery that we have. And even with a lot of this, I have to go, because Black men, and I know that's a whole nother show when we talk about sexual abuse that Black men have experienced at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then told, listen, just man up. You should be honored. No. So how do I process that? And they carry that secret. I have so many Black men. I would dare to say, of my clients that are Black men, 25% of them have experienced some sort of sexual assault or molestation that they have never spoken about, that drives them crazy, and is a secret suffering killer in their lives.
And so that's suffering in silence. And
Suffering in silence.
where we just suffer in silence. There's no one to talk to, because then you're going to be prejudged by what you said. So now everyone's going to treat you like, okay, you're especially homophobics.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you respond
to what you said, though, about trying to redirect, but you also validate the person's concern and issue. And I think oftentimes people are just redirected without validating their situation. And so then that forces them to just close everyone out, because, I need a shoulder to lean on. I don't need you to tell me that I'm right, but I need you to listen and to acknowledge what I'm dealing with, and then help me get through that. And without that, it just forces people to close up. And like you said, then we implode.
Yes.
And now everything is just bottled up.
Yes.
Because you have no one to validate your issue. Or at least validate the fact that what you're saying is okay to feel how you feel, and then help you get through it.
I think that's the important part of validating someone's feelings, because you don't know what they're feeling or what they've dealt with. But when you're already ready to scold them for feeling that way, it makes them withdrawn. And so now they don't want to talk to anybody about it. And then that's when they go and carry out their plan.
Most definitely.
So, Marty, share with some of the signs that parents may need to look for, or a family member need to look for from a friend or another family member that may have suicidal ideations.
Awesome. Paula hit it right on the nose when she said leaving a letter or a note. When you're starting to get all these phone calls like, hey, wait a minute, you got a call from so-and-so too? You got a call too? Wait a minute, what's going on? When people start giving away their prized possessions and their personal items. You're like, you love that trophy, or you love those jeans. Wait a minute, no, why are you? No, I don't need them anymore. Talk to me. Talk. When people are starting to isolate or cutting off friends, and I say it this way: if someone's normal behaviors are totally different, that's a time to raise an eyebrow, and not say what's wrong with you. That's judgment. What's wrong with you? We've all heard that. We got to ask her, hey, something's going on. How are you doing? See, that's different. That shows concern, as opposed to, well, what's wrong with you? That's judgment.
Right.
And we have to be careful not to judge in those. Get them to talk. If you have concerns, don't leave them alone. I love what you said, Paula. You was like, we doing a beeline from Olive Garden, but we ain't leaving you. What's going on?
And she did. And it was her and it was several other friends. And not only did they just come, we sat there for quite some time. I mean, it was like, okay, I'm ready for y'all to go now. You know, it was a long time, but I appreciate it.
Yes.
Somebody had
They
to
did
go
not
there.
That's a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a clear, just doing something like that. Just showing up, say, listen, I know you said don't come over. I'm here. I done brought pizza. I got some soda, got some pop. If we got to stay here all night and get fat and happy, we're going to do something up in here. But let's talk. Let's go. Let's go for a walk, whatever. A lot of times it's getting people out of that atmosphere because suicide is a permanent condition to a temporary problem.
Yeah.
And we got to help them to see that that's temporary, but you don't have to make this permanent decision. And then you're leaving everyone else lost behind you. Now, it's not meant to be a selfish act because they're not thinking in their right mind. So a lot of times they say, well, that was selfish. Well, for them, it was not selfish at that point in time. But we have to look at why they, are contemplating this. And then it does leave. And I think it was Vanessa Green's, her comment, how do we help those behind? And what does it do to those behind? And thank you, Paula, for saying, we can't take it. There's so many different levels of grief in that and making sure we're looking at it from the right angle. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's unbelievable. But for me, I've made it clear that I'd never want to, as long as I can help, to have another young Black male or anyone commit suicide with me trying to do everything in my will. Because I stop out and say, okay, now you didn't turn the corner. We got to talk. What's your plan? How are we going to do this? What's going on? Do you have means? Do you have access? Baby, we can't leave. Clear the rest of my appointment. We talking. And we can't be afraid of it.
Everybody's grief journey is different. And everybody takes different. Some people may get over it right away. Some people, it could take years. And we can't judge them for how the process is. Yes.
We are going to take a 2-minute break. We'll be right back. But stay tuned. Please gather your questions that you may have for any one of our guests when we return. Stay tuned.
And share the.
Welcome back.
That was pretty abrupt. Sorry about that.
Yes, I'm gonna be professional like you. You got this beautiful 2-minute break in there. I love it. Everyone kind of get a drink of water. I love it.
Right.
Yeah, I know it can get heated up, and our mouths get a little dry, so kind of have a little break there. I mean, I'm glad that you guys took advantage of it. Yeah, so we didn't have any questions, but I want to talk about it because specifically this platform is some of the things that we shy away from in the church. And I think, our faith is tested. It doesn't make us less of a Christian. It doesn't make us less of a leader or whatever our position may be in the church. But sometimes our faith is tested. My faith is tested quite often. But I know how to quiet myself and be still and go before the Lord until I receive an answer. There's this song that has been ministering to me for the last week or so. It's by Nia Allen, and it's simply called Wait. But part of that in her verse, she says, don't move, wait on God. And so a lot of times we're going to experience so many different things that's coming at us. But the thing is, don't move. Many know me, and they know that my worst fear is to be outside of the will of God. And so when God tells me to do something, I check with him several times. I need a confirmation before I move. Even like when he told me to start this podcast, I'm like, oh, yes, sure, I'll do it, because I thought I had to be behind the scenes. When I thought of a podcast, I thought, yeah, I can do audio. But when it was live, it was a whole different story. So just knowing that our faith will be tested is just a matter of trusting God and having that outlet where we can speak to someone, as well as maybe pastors should now implement this in some of their programs at church, to have where people need to speak to them and, if they're having suicidal thoughts or if they just need an outlet for someone to just listen to them without having to say anything.
No, I'm so glad you said that because we're at my church. We're definitely starting. We always had some barely started a grief and loss, but I just did completed a 6-week training class on the stages of grief, and we were dealing with that. And some of them had suicide, or some of their family members had committed suicide or successful to suicide, and or even with COVID. And we're seeing that there's a need for a support group that's ongoing like this.
Mhm.
And thank you for saying that because I totally agree. And we therapists, or if you ask your members in your church, hey, are you a therapist or a licensed coach or something that can support us in that? Listen, we give free services all the time. And if it's helping the body of Christ and helping create safe spaces for especially men to be able to just say, hey, I'm not okay, then that's half the battle right there.
Mhm.
What about the long-term effects that this is going to have, this whole COVID situation, on all of our frontline workers, doctors,
Woo.
nurses? I
You
don't have,
asked a loaded question.
but I know that there are many funeral directors that have committed suicide,
Yes.
many doctors that have committed
Yes.
suicide, nurses. Connecticut and New York were hot zones, epicenters for a good portion of
Mm-hmm.
April and May of last year.
Yes.
And I didn't think about suicide, but I walked into a portion of our facility and I saw more death at that moment than I had ever in one room in all of my career. And the amount of people that had succumbed to COVID-19
Mm-hmm.
in the months of April, May, and June was just astronomical. And so, when this is all over, who's going to support our doctors, our nurses, our therapists who had to provide therapy to everyone else? I mean, who supports the frontline workers?
That's a great question. And I think what we're going to have to be ready for is a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
That we have. And I have, and it's a shameless plug tonight, I have 4 Black female doctors coming on, and we're talking about the effects of COVID and doing that. And so offline, we have a conversation about that and them seeking me for therapy and all that. And that I have my own therapist, like, I believe you have to have one, especially in this climate that we're going through, so that I don't lose my sanity. And some days I have to say, I have to take a mental health day just because I've heard so much, just like you've seen so much death, more than you have in your career with that. How do you, at some point, you have to step back so that you don't dehumanize yourself in your work that you do.
That's right.
Absolutely. Marty, go ahead and share how they can watch you. You're coming on this evening?
Yes, on my show, Mental Health Matters with Marty. And thank you for that. And we have a show that I call House Calls.
Okay.
And it's with Dr. Allen, Dr. McKinney, Dr. Horn, and I forgot the last Sherry's last name, Shelley's last name. But I wanted to bring on Black doctors for us to talk about the vaccination. Let's talk about COVID, how it's affected our communities. I believe in an integrative approach to medicine, where we have not just our doctors, but our therapy as well, so that we can all talk together. Because like you're saying, definitely you see your doctor on a quarterly basis, and if I see them once a month or twice a month, we all can now put together the best treatment plan specifically designed for you, for your physical and emotional health and wellness.
Absolutely.
And we talk about after this pandemic that we're going to need a year or two just to deal with the amount of grief, death that we have dealt with. Because, as a funeral director and all that, we go into work mode. And then when it all starts to slow down, that's when we break.
Okay. I had put a post on Facebook a while back, and I'm paraphrasing, but I said, I have everyone lean and cry on my shoulders every day. Who do I get to lean on?
Yeah.
And, sometimes, you stand there and you've got a straight face and you're in work mode, you're here to serve, but on the inside, you're dealing with your own issues. You're dealing with grief and this tragedy, just the same when you think about all the people that have succumbed to this. How many folks I've had to close the casket on over and over again just because of COVID. I mean, and it is just constant. And then you're at a point where only 10 people can come to a funeral at some point. And people are dying with no one by their side, and you know, I'm coming into your home with a hazmat suit on to come and get your mother who died from COVID. You don't want to see that. You don't, even though you understand what we're dealing with, it's tough. And so now, who do I have? And so I appreciate that you recognize that after this is all said and done, we're going to need some time. There's going to be some PTSD among all of us.
Yes.
Yeah, and funerals are totally different. I'm the advisor for the bereavement ministry at our church, so we were the ones on the side of the cat. We would greet Lauren in the doorway. But then we're stationed, 2 people on each side, and as soon as a tear drops, we're giving people tissue, we're rubbing their back, we're holding them, I cried over people I had never even met because of the grief that I saw on their loved ones left behind. You can't even do that anymore. I went to a service Saturday. I saw Lauren there, and it's like you want to go to hug and your elbow bumping, and it's just, when is that going to come back? Like
when do you start shaking hands again? If I don't never shake another hand, I won't be mad.
I know, but people miss hugs.
Yes.
Normal. I mean, when do we ever get back to that? You know, does the church ever get back to where we're elbow to elbow and we've got 200 people in the choir stand in robes and having 3-night revivals and packing out the place and overflow? Are we ever going to get back to that?
I don't think so. What do you think, Mark?
I don't know. I'm hopeful. I really am. I'm hopeful. Will it be in the next year? I don't think it's going to be in the next year.
I don't know.
But maybe in the next couple of years, we'll see what happens, and we just pray and trust the will of God. That's when our faith comes in.
Right.
We've gone through one pandemic before. Years and many, 1920 or something like that. But hey, we made it through that one. We'll make it through this one.
And we're here. We're here.
Yes.
There's so many that aren't. Marty, do you want to speak in terms of being a COVID survivor?
Yes. And yes, even as a COVID survivor. I love the co-host of that. And I'm a therapist, and I had to talk to myself because I have never been that sick for that long in my entire life.
Did you think you were going to die?
At times, yeah, I could see why people would get in that spiral mindset. I didn't have to go to the hospital, so they considered mine mild. I'm like, well, if this is mild, I hate to see what severe felt like.
Right.
And I was sick. My son was sick. My mother, who lives with me, she was sick. My brother was sick. My business partner. So I'm trying to go up and down the steps, making sure my elderly mother was taken care of. And there were times I couldn't make it up the steps. I just laid out in the middle of the living room floor with that. And I had to talk to myself and say, this is temporary. This is temporary. God, I know this is not the end because I know that you have a plan for me and I have not fulfilled your plan. So God, help me. That was the mental daily talk that I had to have with myself.
And I watched you push through because I remember you doing one of your shows and you were sweating. And I just have to say, you increased my prayer life because.
Oh my God. I appreciate that. I was trying to hide it as much as possible.
Well, obviously, you didn't do a good job, sir.
I had pillows. I had towels. I was sweating. Portia goes, "What is wrong with you?" I said, "I'm suffering from COVID. Just take the camera off of me as much as you can and keep it pushing."
Wow, that's amazing. Whew. So we talked about COVID and. We talked about suicidal thoughts, of course. So let's talk to someone, maybe in the audience or may listen to this later, what to do when your faith is tested. Because sometimes some people just have a good la la la. They're just skipping around and they've never encountered anything. They've never had any issues. Yes, Lauren?
I think if they're honest, they have encountered a lot. So a good memory is what allowed me to get through. And so
Okay.
I remember that he's brought me through so much, so many other things. And then I think the bigger issue is I had to be honest with what I was dealing with.
Yes.
I had to weigh what I was dealing with and
Yes.
really measure what I was going through,
Mhm.
and understood that it really wasn't as heavy as what I had been brought through. And so that's what allowed me to get through that. So when you talk about faith, faith really often is just reminding you of what God has already done.
Yes, 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 yes. I remember this bishop, I always quote her. She said a long time ago, and it stuck with me. I may have been in my 20s when she said this, but it was so profound. She said, "We don't need another miracle. We need a memory."
That's right.
So we need to think back on that time that God did put us through. And that has always stuck with me. We don't need another miracle. We need a memory.
Yes. And part of how we can keep the memory going is by journaling.
Yeah.
Because that's a record of what God has done specifically for us.
That's right.
So that when we get in those depressed moments, we're going to have them as long as you're breathing and we're on this earth. There's going to be times you have those depressed moments that you just don't feel like getting up. You just don't feel like. But when I can go to my journal and be like, oh yeah, God did. Wait a minute. Okay. And then you get that hope. You're like, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, the fact that he woke you up was enough hope for me, because the wages of sin is death, right? So every day that I'm able to get up, that's another gift. That's another opportunity to realize that I'm here for a reason and for a purpose. And he allowed me to wake up yet again to fulfill that purpose. And so you talk about a memory, you just remember all the steps you took in life and all of the obstacles you overcome. They were for a reason and for a purpose. And you know, he's not through working with me yet, so I had to remember that, you know, and sometimes the best part about it, honestly, you just have to encourage yourself, truthfully. You have to just, if no one else encourages you, you have to encourage yourself.
That's right.
Yes, yes, and I had to do that a lot, where I just had to be like David, encourage myself. And you're going to find yourself giving your own self a pat on the back or giving your own self a high five, you know, and that's where it is. You know, so many times we look for others to validate us when God has already validated us.
That's right.
Just go back and say, Lord, if we did it before, you'll do it again.
Do it again.
Yes.
And I feel like you just really have to seek God's face.
That's it.
And pour out to him, and things that you can't tell anyone, you can tell him, and you have to know that he is listening. He will guide your footsteps. He will give you exactly what you need when you need it. And then in addition to that, he has the Holy Spirit, who is your comforter. It's that peace that surpasses all understanding that I spoke about earlier. And with me, music and different songs and getting in that atmosphere of praise and worship. And mindless plug for JJ Harrison. We went to high school together. But he has
no way.
Wow.
Live.
Yeah. That song is powerful.
And you will want to live.
Yes.
Love it.
And it's so catchy, and it does something for you. Live. We shall not die.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's that hope.
Yeah.
And if we are feeling suicidal, if we're feeling that hopelessness, that's not the time to isolate. And I know that goes against everything that we might think, but that's when we have to go mind and spirit over mood.
That's right.
Because how I feel is not who God created me. I might feel down, but I know that I'm more than a conqueror. I might feel hopelessness, but I know that I can do all things through Christ.
Yes.
I might feel definitely hopeless, but joy comes in the morning. I'm looking for my morning. Yeah, and then just talking scripture through that definitely helps with listen. Just give you beauty for ashes.
Yes.
When my heart is overwhelmed, they lead me to the rock. That's right.
Yes, I just put that on the post today. Lead me to the rock. That's high tonight. Psalm 62, I believe. That's one of my favorite scriptures. I have plenty of favorite scriptures, but
right.
Scriptures, because we do get overwhelmed. You know, when my
Yes.
heart is overwhelmed, lead me to
Yes.
the rock that is high
Yes.
and high. And
Yes.
you feel that comfort when you say that. It's something about just saying that, lead me to the rock. I remember TD Jakes, he came out with the love songs, that CD some years ago. One of the songs was Usher Me Into the Presence of the Lord. And he said that song was for his wife because she had lost, I believe, her mother at the time, and he couldn't do anything for her. And she said, just usher me into the presence of
my God.
Usher me into the presence of the Lord, you know, because here I know I can be all right. I know that I can let my hair down. I know that I'm going to be comforted in the presence of the Lord. And so that is another song that is so amazing and comforting. Usher me into the presence of the Lord.
Amazing.
This is a beautiful conversation. I really enjoyed this, truthfully.
So you're trying to leave now?
Oh, not at all. I'm really touched. No, honest to God, I can talk all night, but I really appreciate this. I think we need more outlets like this, and we need more people to just be honest and open, and transparent. And you know, I continue to say it, but I know what it is to go through and to deal with things internally and stand there and smile, and behind the glasses and behind the shade, sometimes it's tears, and not always of joy. Sometimes they are sorrow. And I think when you're honest and you can just acknowledge and accept that and recognize that, that's really the real stage of getting through anything that you're dealing with, accepting and acknowledging it, and then having that resource to lean on. And sometimes as a therapist, I'm sure you can attest, there just aren't humans that you can lean on. And sometimes it's really just between you and God. And sometimes people that you thought were there to support you aren't going to. And so I think since we're talking about faith, it's important for people to understand that sometimes, you know, it really just is between you and God. And you just have to be willing to deal with that and accept that. But recognizing it is key.
Yes. And it is so important for us to pray and intercede for one another as well. That we just have to lift each other up.
I was going to say, on the other side, in terms of things that you can do, I actually sought out workshops that I could attend to learn more about suicide and became a suicide preventionist. And my husband did, and my daughter Trinity also became a suicide preventionist. So we put in the work, we got the certificate, and now we know how to direct.
That's awesome. And that's what's needed. I believe that also that God is strategically putting believers in these places.
That's right.
We can minister even in our secular jobs.
That's right.
You know, when I work with children, you know, and I pat them on the head, I just anoint my hands and just discreetly just start laying hands on them. They don't know the difference.
Right.
You know, But, you know, we can't just come out and, you know, start laying hands on them. But discreetly, we can do that. You know, put on hands and just praying over them. But I thank God for all of you for coming on tonight, because this platform is for people to be authentic. Be authentically themselves, you know, because so many times we're hiding behind the scenes and we're struggling in silence, no one to talk to. And even if they're not asking questions, they're going to go back and they're going to look at this and they're going to seek help, or they're going to build their relationship closer with God. And that's the final outcome that we want.
Most definitely.
For others. So do you guys have any closing remarks? To have one, if you have a platform for yourself.
I just want to encourage people to have those uncomfortable conversations, and like you said earlier, check on your strong friends and put God first, and He'll design the rest of your life, and you can live.
Yes. Amen.
Awesome. Yes, I share with everyone. Ask, how are you? How are you doing? And get in there. Don't let us get off with the church area. Blessed and highly favored. I can see you're blessed, and I know you're favored. But now, how are you doing right now and today?
I remember some years ago, I was going through something, and my pastor said, how you doing? And I was like, oh, okay. He said, no, how you really doing? And I just bust out crying. He was like,
Yes.
come with me in my office. But
Yeah.
there's especially when you have a leader that knows their sheep, you know, and you know when something isn't wrong, you know when someone says they're okay, that they're really not okay. It's a matter of us paying attention because we have our own things that we're dealing with. And so
That's right.
they slip through the cracks and, you know, no one noticed that they stopped coming to church or they started moving further and further in the back or, you know, they weren't visible as much. So we just have to keep an eye on those people, especially during this pandemic where we don't see them as much. You know, send them a text. How are you? I was thinking about you.
Most definitely.
That's right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Lauren, you have some closing remarks? Or you
I mean, other than just be honest with yourself, I mean, I think that's just key. We just got to be honest with ourselves and recognize where we are in life and take a moment. You know, you talk about the pandemic. I worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week from the start of the pandemic up until the second week of October. And then finally, I decided that I needed a weekend for me. Well, I was on the crash. It was just too much. I had seen too much, dealt with too much. And though I wasn't suicidal, I was just at a breaking point. And I think it's important, even without being suicidal, is when you get to that breaking point in life, you just have to be honest, figure out how you can separate, restart, rejuvenate, you know, get that fresh breath air, fresh breath air again and go from there. So I think above all, just be honest with yourself and figure it out from there.
Awesome. Marty, I know that you have your own podcast and your own platform. You can share your information out right now that so that people can follow you, your social media or your podcast.
Thank you. I try to keep everything simple. My podcast and my social media on Facebook is Mental Health Matters with Marty. So Mental Health Matters with Marty. Definitely, we'd love for you to join our podcast. Just did a series on Black fatherhood and addressing Black fatherhood. And then on Instagram, mental_health_Marty. Would love for you to check us out on there as well. So thank you. And thank you again for this amazing opportunity and to serve with you on this platform with these distinguished guests. I see I got to make it out to the East Coast.
We'd love to have you, man. I'm coming out to the West Coast. So. Come
on. I'm fully vaccinated, so I'm good.
Same here. I got you.
Look, I still got my mask.
That's right.
Awesome. Maybe we'll talk about the vaccination another time. I'm quite sure you probably already spoke about it on your platform, right?
We have, but you know, you can never talk enough about it because we're trying to dispel the rumors and myths that we have about it in our communities, because we have been the most affected by this pandemic, disproportionately affected by it too. So we just want people to be in good wisdom and make wise decisions for life.
Awesome. Well, I thank you, each one of you, again for joining me tonight. I think this was a well-needed conversation. It was
very much fun.
I think we do need a part two.
Yes.
This is just awesome. Also, you know, keep one another in prayer. Look out for your strong friends. Check them out. Check on them. Send them a text. Send them an email. Give them a call. Let them know that you're thinking about them, that you love them. And that's it. So thank you again for joining us, everyone. Join us again next week. And we will be speaking with Bishop Macbeth. He will be speaking on the topic, leading while empty. As leaders lead on empty. So that should be a powerful topic for next week. So join us again next week at 7 p.m. And please share, like, and comment on this page. All right. Good night, everyone.
Thank you again.
Thanks for watching.
Join us again next week